A guy once set a steel Rolex down on my counter, a watch worth more than the car he drove there in, and asked me to help him sell it. Not to trade up to something fancier, to go buy a plain black Casio for about $40 instead. Everybody who's ever loved watches has dreamed of owning the watch he was letting go. He'd spent years chasing his. And the part that still sticks with me all this time later is that selling it was one of the smartest moves I ever watched anybody make. Stick with me and I'll make that trade make total sense to you. And I'd bet you start looking at whatever's on your own wrist a little differently by the end. Let me be fair to the Rolex first, because I'm not about to tell you it's a scam. It absolutely is not. A steel Rolex sports watch is one of the very few things you can buy brand new that later sells for more than you paid. At the start of this year, Morgan Stanley and Watch Charts had Rolex, Patek Philippe, and Audemars Piguet as the only three brands whose watches, on average, still traded above retail. For Rolex, that was about 7% over list. They've been building these since 1905, and the whole idea is evolution over revolution. So a Submariner from the 1960s still reads as a Submariner today. That's real. If you want one, I mean that. But here's what nobody mentions while you're standing at the glass, saving up, refreshing a waitlist that runs 3 to 5 years for the hot models. The watch can end up wearing you. I've watched it happen to smart, level-headed people. They finally get the grail, and then they can't bring themselves to wear it. A writer over at Time and Tide owns a Rolex Daytona, a proper grail, and he admitted that before he leaves the house with it, he runs what he calls an internal risk assessment. Where am I going? Who'll be there? What could scratch it? Most days that little check fails and the Daytona just stays in the safe. Think about how backwards that is. We save for years to buy a thing, then we're too scared to use it. It's the good couch at your grandmother's house, the one wrapped in plastic nobody was ever actually allowed to sit on. A watch is supposed to live on your wrist. A grail you're afraid to wear just lives in a drawer with the lights off. That same writer knew a guy who got so wound up about a grail that he sold it purely to make the anxiety stop. For a lot of people who own something, they're scared to bump against the doorframe. That's a normal Tuesday. That was my guy exactly. He had wanted a steel Rolex since he was a teenager. He had even owned a Tudor and a Grand Seiko before this, both genuinely lovely watches, and he sold them both at a loss for one silly reason. They weren't a Rolex. So he saved up and bought the real thing, certified pre-owned, straight from an authorized dealer, papers and all. And within a few weeks, he spotted a tiny mark on the dial and a scratch on one of the hands. On a watch that costs that much, a scratch doesn't feel like character. It feels like money evaporating. He told me he'd owned it 4 months and worn it maybe 4 weeks total, because the rest of the time he was too nervous to put it on. So he brought it back to my counter. And selling it hit him harder than it hit me. He didn't make money. This is the part the investment crowd loves to skip over. Yes, the market says Rolex holds value, but that's the market as a whole. When you personally walk in to sell one watch, the dealer offers you well under the going rate because he's got bills too. The timing didn't help either. Steel Sports, Rolexes, had come screaming down off their 2022 peak, some models off 30 to 50%, once the pandemic buying frenzy cooled. Morgan Stanley counted something like 11 straight quarters of falling second-hand prices after that top. One collector who sold his own Submariner put the quiet truth of it best. Easy to resell, never once guaranteed he'd actually make a dime. My guy took a haircut on the watch. He'd been too scared to wear and walked out lighter in more ways than one. What he bought instead is the whole point here. a plain black Casio. And to see why that wasn't a downgrade, you've got to look at what the little plastic thing actually does. Start with the one nobody brags about, the Casio F91W. Basically unchanged since 1989, about $15, and it keeps time to within roughly 30 seconds a month. Sit with that number, because plenty of gorgeous Swiss automatics, including ones that cost 5 figures, drift 5 to 20 seconds every single day. So the $15 plastic Casio is flatly more accurate than the grail it sat next to on my counter. The battery lasts around 7 years. It weighs about as much as a few coins. The case is a tough resin that shrugs off knocks, the watch equivalent of the old Nokia you could drop down the stairs and still call your mum on. Shower, ocean, changing a tire in the rain, it doesn't complain. Look up the torture tests people run on these, freezing them, running them over. A casual swim doesn't even register. The official water rating is modest on paper, but the real-world abuse these things survive online blows right past it. It just works. Then there's the thing my guy actually bought, which wasn't a watch at all. It was freedom. Nobody's following you off a train for a black plastic Casio. There's no risk assessment. You never take it off for the rough parts of your day, because the rough parts are exactly what it's for. You forget you're even wearing it, and that's the whole trick. My guy looked lighter the day he strapped his on and walked out. No safe, no second thoughts. If you'd rather own the watch that goes everywhere than the one hiding in a safe, do me a quick favor and hit subscribe, because this is the kind of watch talk I get into here every week. Alright, and if you think a cheap Casio is a broke person's watch, look again. Barack Obama has been photographed in one. So has Bill Gates. A former intelligence officer named J.R. Seeger wrote about wearing a cheap Casio on missions in Afghanistan, precisely because it was small, tough, and totally forgettable. When your actual job is to not be noticed, you don't strap on a gold submariner. The same square of plastic has been on playgrounds, construction sites, and battlefields at the same time for over 30 years. The thing that really got my guy is about money, but not the way you'd guess. That same little Casio is, by most counts, the best-selling watch on the planet. Casio reportedly makes around 3 million of them a year. It's the #1 seller on Amazon, sitting on a 4.6 rating across more than 50,000 reviews. And here's my favorite detail. Stephen Bailey, the design critic who helped found the Design Museum in London, called it a modest masterpiece. So you're wearing one of the most successful objects in the entire history of watchmaking, and because it's $15, you'll never check its resale value, never insure it, never lie awake wondering if the market went soft. Nothing on it to protect, nothing to lose sleep over. Meanwhile, the flipping frenzy that made Rolex feel like a money printer is basically finished now for everything but a handful of the hottest steel models. And here's the part that turns a cheap watch almost spiritual for people deep in this hobby. Serious collectors, folks with real grails sitting at home, will sometimes put every expensive watch away and wear nothing but a $15 Casio for a whole week, on purpose. The writers at Fratello have done exactly that, boxing up everything else and living on the little Casio. They call it cleaning the palate, stripping away the hype and the auction charts and the resale spreadsheets until all that's left is the plain, quiet thing a watch was always meant to be. And they come out the other side saying the same line every time. It reminded them why they fell for watches in the first place. One watch writer described going back to small, cheap Casios after years of chasing bigger and bigger pieces, and how it quietly lit the whole hobby back up for him. That's the strange magic of the watch nobody's supposed to care about. It hands you back the part of this you actually enjoyed before the prices showed up. So let me put my guy's own question to you, the one he asked himself standing right there at the counter. What are you actually buying a watch for? If it's the craftsmanship, the history, the feel of a submariner that's barely changed in 60 years, then go get one and then wear the thing. Don't hide it. But if what you're really chasing is a number on a screen, or a nod from a stranger, or the feeling that you finally arrived, no watch on earth is going to fill that, and the more it costs, the more it's going to own you. That's what my guy worked out at the counter. He didn't trade down. He traded a beautiful watch he was scared to touch for a plain one he'd never have to think about again. That Rolex mostly lived in a safe. His Casio has been to the beach, the garage, and the ocean. It's still ticking on his wrist right now, and it still cost him about 40 bucks. Everybody in this hobby dreams of the Rolex. He's the one guy I watched wake up from that dream and come out ahead. And every time I spot a cheap Casio on somebody who could clearly afford far, far more, I think of him, and I smile because I know exactly what they figured out. If you want the flip side, the small handful of watches that genuinely are worth every penny of what they cost, that's the one I'd watch next.